Rome crowned two brothers. Caracalla made sure only one survived. Caracalla didn't just fight for power, he killed his own brother to keep it. Before we continue, subscribe. It helps us keep history's greatest stories alive. Caracalla was born into a world that did not understand peace. The Severan dynasty looked strong from the outside, but inside it was built on ambition, blood, and the loyalty of soldiers who changed their allegiance as fast as the wind. The empire he was born into carried darkness beneath its golden surface. Even as a child, he saw how quickly smiles could turn to threats. Rome was a place where trust never lived long. His father, Septimius Severus, was a man carved out of iron. He fought for the crown with his own hands, marching across continents until Rome accepted him as emperor. To hold the empire together, he ruled with discipline, strategy, and fear, and he expected his sons to follow him in the same armor. Caracalla watched him closely, learning that power was something you took, not something you waited for. Beside Caracalla stood his younger brother, Geta. At first they looked like any pair of imperial boys, two princes playing in marble halls, two sons living under the shadow of a legend. But even from childhood, something in them pushed against each other like two blades in the same sheath. Every gift became a competition. Every whisper became a reason for jealousy. Rome noticed. Rome always noticed. Caracalla grew into a boy with fire in his chest. His eyes were sharp, his temper quick, and he wanted loyalty the way other boys wanted praise. He felt danger even when none was there, and the palace fed that fear with every rumor and every shifting alliance. His father tried to make him a warrior, a protector of the empire, but Caracalla was already becoming something else, a prince who looked over his shoulder more than he looked at his future. And Geta, quiet and clever, only made the tension worse. Their home was a palace of marble, but the walls listened more than they sheltered. Servants bowed, but they also talked. Advisors smiled, but they also watched. The boys grew up knowing that every person around them had the power to lift them higher or bury them alive. Nothing in their world was simple, not even family. And the tension grew. By the time they reached their teenage years, the rivalry between the brothers had become impossible to hide. They argued in public. They refused to share meals. Some nights the palace guards found them shouting through locked doors. Some nights they found silence instead, which was far more dangerous. Their father saw it happening, but even an emperor cannot control the hearts of his sons. Septimius Severus wanted one thing: to leave behind a dynasty that would last. He imagined his sons ruling together, protecting Rome like two shields standing side by side. He believed their differences could somehow become strength. But the empire was too large, too heavy, too filled with shadows for that dream to survive, and the brothers had already begun to hate what the other represented. Their father took them on campaign, hoping the battlefield would teach unity. He wanted them to see Roman soldiers, harsh winters, and the discipline of real war. He wanted them to bleed together so they would bond. But instead, the marches and battles hardened Caracalla into someone even more fierce, someone who respected soldiers more than senators, steel more than words, and loyalty more than family. And Geta stayed the same, quieter, gentler, more loved by the people Caracalla mistrusted. Caracalla did not forget. Caracalla did not forgive. Time was running out for the old emperor. Septimius Severus grew sick while still far from home, leading his sons deep into foreign lands. Even as he lay dying, he tried to command unity. He told them to stay together, make the soldiers rich, and ignore everyone else. It was the last wish of a father who knew that without unity, his sons would drown in the sea of Roman politics. But his words could not heal years of bitterness. When Septimius Severus died, the empire shook. For the first time in its history, Rome had two emperors, Caracalla and Geta, equal in power, equal in title, equal in danger. The idea sounded noble, but in the real world, it was poison. The palace split in two. The government split in two. Even the servants picked sides when the moon was full and the doors were shut. Rome held its breath. Caracalla and Geta refused to share anything, not decisions, not duties, not even rooms in the same palace. They built walls between themselves, each claiming different halls, different guards, different advisors. Their mother, Julia Domna, walked through this broken home, trying to keep peace, but her words fell like rain on stone. The boys could barely look at each other with hatred rising like smoke. Whispers started spreading. Some said Caracalla wanted Geta dead. Others said Geta wanted to move first. Some tales claim he planned nothing at all, that he was simply living in constant fear of his brother. But Caracalla believed the worst, and in Rome, belief was more dangerous than truth. The brothers reached the point where even walking past each other became a threat. They met rarely, and when they did, the room filled with enough hatred to make guards tremble. Advisors began to expect the day when steel would flash in a hallway or poison would appear in a cup. Even their mother sensed the storm closing in, though she tried desperately to hold them both together. But some families are not meant to survive empire. Every step Caracalla took was heavier, faster, sharper. He saw only one path forward, one solution, one way to end the fear that had lived in him since childhood. He saw a world where he ruled alone, where Geta was no longer a shadow at his heel, where Rome belonged entirely to him. And in the cold heart of the palace, he made his decision. The empire held its breath, because the worst was yet to come. Only one brother would walk out of that room alive. The moment finally came inside a quiet room of the imperial palace. Geta walked in believing it was a meeting for peace, a moment to calm the storm that was destroying their family. Their mother stood beside them, tired, trembling, praying that their sons would finally speak to each other like brothers again. But Caracalla had already filled the room with soldiers loyal only to him. The trap was set before Geta even took his second step. What happened next became one of the darkest scenes in Roman history. Soldiers rushed forward, swords drawn, faces cold. Geta fell into his mother's arms, begging for mercy. She tried to shield him with her own body, as if she could protect him from the steel. But a mother's arms are no defense against an emperor's will. And the room filled with screams. When Geta died, the silence afterwards was heavier than the crime itself. Julia Domna collapsed to the floor, her son's blood soaking the fabric of her clothes, her hand shaking as she tried to hold him even after he was gone. Caracalla walked out of the room pale and breathless, but not ashamed. He believed he had finally saved himself. He believed the danger had ended. He was wrong. Rome did not forget what it had heard or what it had seen. Geta's supporters panicked, senators whispered rebellions, and entire families locked their doors expecting soldiers to arrive. Caracalla responded the only way he knew, with force. The purge began within hours, spilling out of the palace like a dark flood. Names were erased, statues destroyed, people dragged into the streets. Fear spread through the capital. Caracalla ordered Geta's memory wiped from every record, every inscription, every monument. His portraits were smashed, his name carved out of stone. Anyone who spoke kindly about him risked execution. Even those who cried too loudly at his funeral were taken away by soldiers. Rome watched in horror as one brother became an emperor made of cold iron and wounded pride. he stepped deeper into darkness. The purge killed thousands. Some were Geta's true supporters, but many were innocent. Servants, secretaries, even children. Caracalla believed any spark of sympathy for Geta could ignite rebellion, and so he crushed every spark he could find. This was the price he demanded for safety, though safety never truly came. But amidst all this cruelty, Caracalla tried desperately to justify himself. He told the Senate Geta plotted to kill him. He told the army that the empire could not survive two emperors. He even told the people that he had saved Rome from chaos. None of it healed the guilt that clung to him. None of it brought peace. Rome held its breath. None of it healed the guilt that clung to him. None of it brought peace. Rome held its breath. Caracalla began to drift away from the capital. He trusted soldiers more than politicians, camps more than palaces, and the battlefield more than marble floors. The army became his refuge, the only place where he felt truly safe. He marched constantly through Germany, Gaul, and the northern frontiers, seeking victories that would wash the blood from his hands. But victories never lasted long enough. He kept marching. To the soldiers, he was generous. He gave them gifts, raised their pay, and treated them like brothers. In return, they adored him. They followed him into harsh winters and violent battles, believing he was one of them. But Caracalla's love for the army was also a shield, a way to escape Rome's judgment and the memory of Geta dying in his mother's arms. He ran from ghosts he could not kill. One of his most surprising decisions was granting Roman citizenship to millions across the empire. With a single decree, he expanded the identity of Rome farther than anyone before him. Some said he did it for taxes, others said it was a gesture of unity. Whatever his reason, it changed the empire forever. It was one of the few moments where Caracalla's name was tied to something larger than violence. But even this did not save him. Caracalla's paranoia followed him wherever he went. Advisors were replaced, commanders executed, friends watched with fear. He saw enemies in every shadow, even among those who loved him. The empire felt smaller each year, not because of its borders, but because Caracalla trusted almost no one left inside it. The more he ran, the more he felt the walls closing in. And the tension grew. Eventually, Caracalla looked east, toward the Parthian Empire. He dreamed of conquering it as Alexander the Great once did. He imagined himself as a new Alexander, a warrior king, a conqueror of worlds, a ruler whose victories would silence every whisper. But dreams do not erase history, and the shadows of his past walked with him all the way to the frontiers. On campaign in the East, Caracalla's behavior grew stranger. He demanded divine honors, surrounded himself with bodyguards, and refused to sleep without heavy protection. Even his closest officers began to sense how unstable he had become. Caracalla was no longer the fiery prince of his youth. He was a man drowning in fear, anger, and memories he could not escape. He stepped closer to the end. The final betrayal came during a simple roadside stop. Caracalla left his escort briefly while traveling to a temple. A soldier approached him, someone he knew, someone he trusted, and without warning the soldier struck. Caracalla fell in the dirt, far from Rome, far from his family, far from everything he had destroyed. The emperor, who feared everyone, was killed by a man he never suspected. And Rome whispered his name. His death did not bring peace to the empire. It brought confusion, instability, and another wave of political chaos. But it did bring an answer to one question. Caracalla would never outrun the crime that shaped his entire life. His story became a warning carved into marble and memory, a tale of how power twists even the strongest hearts. Rome judged him harshly, and history followed. Some called him a monster, some called him a soldier, some called him a broken son who never learned how to stop fighting. Empires remember their victories, but they never forget their ghosts. Caracalla won an empire, but he lost himself. Hey there, thank you for watching. I know you enjoyed this story. Please like and subscribe to this page to support us. Also, don't forget to check out other amazing stories on this channel. Thank you.